Well, it's good to be back in town. Megan and Emily and I just got back from a few days in California, where both of our families live, but this last trip in particular, we were visiting my family in Redding, which is almost Oregon. And I'm the youngest of 4 children. I've told you that on a couple different occasions. A couple weeks ago, I showed you the picture of us putting the Christmas tree on top of our VW van again. Well, this was the first time in a very long time that all 4 of us children were together at my parents' home, which was just really special for us, considering that I've got a brother in the very north section of California and one at the very southern section of California and a sister in Bulgaria and me in Dallas. It was quite a feat to get everybody together. And what made it particularly special was that it was my dad's 70th birthday party, and he didn't know that my sister was going to be home from Bulgaria. We surprised him. He thought he was going to be picking up my brother from San Diego, and out walks my sister. And the whole week was just really special. It was good to be together. We got a lot of good pictures with each other, and it was fun to see Emily having just a blast with her grandpa and grandma. And we took picture after picture after picture, and I had this realization that as I watched my wife take pictures and then I watched my mom take pictures, they have 2 different styles of photography. And you might resonate with this. I've got my grandfather was a professional photographer, and I've got several of his cameras in my office. I brought a couple. This is a light meter that Ben has told me that he's jealous that I have, because apparently there's something really cool about this one that professional photographers would really appreciate. And then I've got this old Kodak camera that has the different settings on the back. If somebody's standing 5 feet away, you set it at this. If they're 8 feet away, you set it at this. And what I realized is that the way photography has changed is that even just 20 years ago, you'd spend 20 minutes setting up the picture. And so you'd look at this little chart, and granted, this is from more than 20 years ago, and you'd make sure that the light was right, and you make sure that you have the right filter on the lens, and you make sure that people are posed correctly, and you do everything you can to prepare for the photo because you know you've got one shot, or at least you know that your film is limited. Well, today, with digital photography, times have changed. You take 1,000 pictures, and you pick your favorite one, and then you do all the adjustments afterward. So I don't know if you have an Instagram account or not, but Instagram has changed the way that we take photos. You take your picture, and you go through page after page looking at the different filters. And there's many different filters you can choose from, and each filter really paints a different picture. You can have the same exact photo, but seen through a different filter. It changes the feel of what you're looking at. It can be really warm. It can look really old. It can be in just black and white. Or it can be really bright. The 20 minutes you spend taking a photo doesn't come before the picture anymore. It comes afterward, trying to decide what your favorite filter is. Well, we're beginning a series called Refocusing the Apocalypse. And part of what we're doing over the course of this series is looking at the book of Revelation through a filter of hope, and not through a filter of fear. I don't know about you, but it seems when I have been exposed to the book of Revelation prior to seminary and graduate education, there are a lot of popular theologies that influenced my perspective, that painted this filter of Revelation as this book of fear. So I didn't even want to touch the book because I was afraid of what I'd be reading. And so over the course of the next 7 weeks, together we'll come to see that maybe that wasn't God's intention for why this book even exists. What if we saw Revelation through the filter of hope? We're going to be doing that in particular by looking at the collection of letters at the beginning of Revelation. So if you'll open your Bibles with me this morning to Revelation chapter 2. There are 7 letters written to 7 churches. Each church struggling with something different than the other. Each church succeeding at something different than the others. And yet, by reading each of these 7 letters, we're given insight into why the book of Revelation was written in the first place, why it even exists. And we're going to start here with the letter to the church in Ephesus. In Revelation chapter 2, verse 1, it says, "To the angel of the church in Ephesus write, these are the words of him who holds the 7 stars in his right hand and walks among the 7 golden lampstands. I know your deeds, your hard work, and your perseverance. I know that you cannot tolerate wicked men, that you have tested those who claim to be apostles but are not, and have found them false. You have persevered and have endured hardships for my name and have not grown weary. Yet I hold this against you. You have forsaken your first love. Remember the height from which you have fallen. Repent and do the things you did at first. If you do not repent, I will come to you and remove your lampstand from its place. But you have this in your favor. You hate the practices of the Nicolaitans, which I also hate. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. To him who overcomes, I will give the right to eat from the tree of life, which is in the paradise of God." This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. Now, as we'll come to see over the course of this series, the language of the book of Revelation is not the easiest to understand. Let me take a quick aside and point this out. I had a seminary professor who always harped on his students for this. It's the book of Revelation, not the book of Revelations, if that matters to you. It mattered to this professor. It was one revelation, and so we talk about it being the book of Revelation. But the book of Revelation is difficult to grasp because of its content and because of its style. We're going to unwrap this over the course of those weeks, but I just want to give you this disclaimer that if you don't understand things right off the bat, I would encourage you to dive in with a commentary next to you, or to at least be patient until we reveal a little more week after week. The reason we're starting with these letters is because the letters in and of themselves are a little easier to understand, and yet they set the context for the rest of the book. Speaking of context, it's important to understand the city of Ephesus as we're talking about the church in Ephesus. This was a city that was all about hustle and bustle. It was about 400 to 500,000 people at the time of John's writing this letter. And it was right at the hub of many different ports of travel, whether that was by land or by sea. And so there were influences from all over the world present in the city of Ephesus. Being such a large city and an important place of trade, it was seen within the Roman Empire as a place of prominence. And so as the Roman Empire did, it granted Ephesus the honor of building temples to honor the Roman Empire. And so Ephesus, scholars say, had 4 of these temples. 4 of these temples that were dedicated to the goddess Roma. Roma embodied the Roman Empire. And so each of these temples was basically set up so that people could go to the temple and worship the empire and worship Caesar. Well, with all of these cultural influences from around the world, with this emphasis on worshiping the empire, with all of these different religions represented in temples and goddesses and gods, it's no question that the church in Ephesus had a hard time not giving in to the temptation to be influenced by the cultures in which it existed. Kind of sounds familiar to today. With us. Talk about life in a big city, life surrounded by cultural influences, life surrounded by different religions and different voices speaking to us and telling us what we should worship. Whether you're aware of it or not, we are influenced by the cultures in which we exist. Cultures of consumerism, cultures of narcissism, cultures where we're encouraged to give and to volunteer, but only because it makes us feel good. Cultures of pride cultures of immediate gratification, a culture that worships celebrity. We could go on and on and on, and we begin to realize that these messages are coming to us from every angle of society, whether it's through print articles or through TV commercials or through films. The messages are subtle, and yet they are influencing who we are. If you think about it, even on a metaphorical level, we have temples all around us. So the question becomes, well, how do we as a church, how do we as Christians who are called to embody God in this world find the balance between living in the world but not being of the world? How do we find that balance between our prophetic voice and yet our genuine love? Many times churches have two responses to this. Some of them will go all the way to this way and say, well, there's no way we can have an influence in this world. So we're just going to accommodate whatever changes occur. And soon you can't tell the difference between the church and the rest of the world. But then the pendulum swings the other way. And sometimes there's churches that say it is our duty and our task to hold the line. We are going to dig in our heels and do everything we can to make sure that this world does not change us. The problem is, oftentimes, those churches express this attitude in terms of hatred and judgment. They become the police of the world, and all of a sudden, the world stops paying attention. Now, it's important to note the author in the book of Revelation doesn't say knowing the difference between right and wrong is a bad thing. But he does say, be careful. Be careful to the extreme at which you take that. So just like the church in Ephesus, this church is praised for knowing that difference, but when they swing to one extreme or the other, they lose sight of their original mission to love God and love others. When they're tempted by the influences all around them, they dig in their heels. And John praises them for that. I should say God praises them through the prophet John. And God says, I admire what you're doing, and I admire that you've tested these different prophets, and you've seen the ones who are false, but you've lost sight of your first love. You've lost sight of your original mission to love those around you. You've done a good job, but at what cost? You see, they've become so removed from their original mission that they forgot what their role as the church really was. Not saying that it's wrong to know the difference between right and wrong. It is the church's role to be a prophetic voice in the world, to call out the wrongs of the world, but never at the cost of loving the world. Kind of think of the church in Ephesus like Burger King. I don't know if you've been paying attention to Burger King's marketing strategies recently, but it's been kind of fascinating to me. And so I've looked up a couple articles in the past week. I looked up one from 2012 where they're announcing changes to the menu of Burger King. And in 2012, their strategy was to keep up with the Joneses, or McDonald's, if you will. And so they came out with all these different options, and their menu was just filled with creative, innovative menu options. But what they found is that just like the previous 2 decades, their sales continued to drop. And only recently have they begun to see a turnaround in their profits. And the analysts attribute this to their new strategy. Burger King's new strategy is to market nostalgia. And so, Burger King has said, okay, we've cluttered our menu with too many things. We're going to pare it down to the things that we were good at in the first place. What put us on the map originally? We're going to look at those things and do them better. So if you've seen Burger King commercials on TV or in magazines, you'll notice the old photos. They're bringing back some of the throwback advertising and the old music, the things that make you think of your good old days with Burger King. They're returning to their original mission. The same thing we see with the church in Ephesus. They've given in to the influence of the changes around them so much that they've lost sight of the love of God, the reason that they exist. Interestingly, this is the same thing that we've done with the book of Revelation. Again, we're going to talk about this over the course of the next several weeks, but I want to begin to set the stage on where we're going with this series. See, some of the most popular interpretations of the book of Revelation are a lot newer than we might realize. And in the church, just like with Burger King, newer is not always better. As we'll come to see historically, theologians and biblical scholars did not always interpret the book of Revelation as this book that predicted political events and treaties and things that immediately bring fear to us and make us hunker down and hide. One thing that has been consistent throughout church history, scholars, theologians, lay people, whoever it is, have always agreed that Jesus will return. And as we'll come to see, the message of the book of Revelation is that Jesus will return. And in the end, God does win. But over the course of these few weeks, we will come to see that the filter through which we read this book drastically changes the way we live our lives. So will we choose to read the book of Revelation through the filter of fear? Or will we choose to read the book of Revelation through a filter of hope? Through the filter that God originally designed the book of Revelation to be read through. As we begin this new year, this is an excellent opportunity for us to reflect on what we're doing with our lives. Are we living lives of judgment? Or are we living lives of genuine love? As we call ourselves Table of Grace, is that just in name? Or when someone walks into this worship space for the first time, do they actually experience the unconditional love of a creator who created every single person on this earth? Again, the text does not tell us to stop thinking about the difference between right and wrong. But imagine what it would look like if the church was known less for its billboards and picket signs and known more for its selfless acts of unconditional love. Or as you may have heard this phrase before, imagine if the church was known less for what it is against and more for what it is for. Now, don't get discouraged that the task is enormous. The church is huge, and it's made up of humans. But let's break it down. What if that change started here? Let's break it down another step. What if that change started with you? In this new year, I encourage you to take on this challenge, to be a person of peace, to be a person of genuine love who isn't removed from God's mission for your life, but who is in tune with what God is wanting to do in and through you. And as your heart is changed, this church will be changed. And as this church is changed, others will see what God is doing here, and they will want to be a part of it. Amen. Amen.